Unfortunately, while I was doing my research, I just came to the conclusion that now Brazil not only has a convicted felon for political corruption as president, Ignacio Lula da Silva, but now has a totalitarian operator as the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, called Alexandre de Moraes. Wow. Poor Brazilians. They deserve a lot better. Elon Musk, the owner of Twitter, has become a target to the highest court because he shoots back. And that's the way you do it in a democracy. Really, we do not know if the Supreme Justice, Mr. de Moraes, is a socialist, or he's a useful fool, or he's a useful idiot for the state.
Right now in Brazil, our political situation is also polarized. There is the left wings, the left side, which represents the Democrat, and there is the right side, which represents the Republican. Right now in Brazil, the current president in office is Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva. He was president for 2 terms already, and he is back in office. Let me talk a little bit about Lula da Silva. Who is this guy? All right, so just to start with, Lula da Silva was once in prison due to corruption. Lula da Silva was involved in corruption scheme 2 to 3 years ago. He went to prison with many other people involved. The federal police, which represents the FBI here in America, they are able to take back 3 trillion reais. It's a lot of money. You have no idea. That was taken in corruption in this car wash scheme, which we call Lava Jato in Brazil. However, Lula was super smart. He equipped the Supreme Court in our country, and President Dilma Rousseff, the one that took place after Lula's term, and also the Vice President Michel Temer, these presidents, they equipped the STF, which is the Supreme Court in Brazil, with judges that in the future would release Lula from prison. And this was exactly what happened in Brazil. So Lula went to prison due to corruption and money stealing. However, he was released from prison through a monocratic decision through one Supreme Court judge. This judge, with a simple sign and a reinterpretation of the law, was able to release Lula. And not only this, he was able to release Lula from prison and also clean completely Lula's record, and then Lula was able to run again against the former president Jair Bolsonaro, and he suspiciously won the presidency of Brazil back. Suspiciously, because in Brazil the vote system is super ultra secret and nobody knows what happened there. Only the Supreme Court, of course, and the TSE, which represents the Electoral Court in Brazil. It's kind of Supreme Electoral Court in Brazil. Yes, we have an electoral court in Brazil, believe or not. So, unfortunately, in Brazil, Lula was involved in many cases of corruptions, and also his party, PT, which they call Workers' Party, or Partido dos Trabalhadores in Portuguese. Let me tell you a little bit about what Lula supports. Okay, Lula supports abortion. Lula is not supporting Israel against the terrorist group against Hamas. Lula supports gender transition and LGBT agenda. Lula supports more taxes. He is increasing the taxes in Brazil. So living in Brazil right now is super expensive. Our gas price is very high right now. The rates of gas in Brazil is one of the most expensive around the world. So Lula, Dilma, and Michel Temer. Lula was a president. So after 8 years, Dilma Rousseff was one of his minister, took place as president. So she won, and then she was impeached. After that, Michel Temer, who was vice president of Dilma Rousseff, who took place. Michel Temer was responsible to place Alexandre de Moraes, who is completely destroying Brazil. Alexandre de Moraes is a minister of the Supreme Court, the one who just kicked out the former Twitter, away from Brazil. We have a lot of people exiled in America. I can give you names. Alan dos Santos is a journalist in Brazil who was denouncing, who was talking about the arbitrary decision and the monocratic decision of Alexandre de Moraes. He had to flee to America and exile himself here, otherwise he would be arrested in Brazil. And Alexandre de Moraes actually tried to bring Alan dos Santos back to Brazil to put him in prison. And he is a journalist. We have another journalist, Paulo Figueiredo, is another journalist persecuted by Alexandre de Moraes. We have Constantino, who had your social network completely blocked. We have a lot of people right now that is being persecuted by Alexandre de Moraes through this dictatorship regime in Brazil. We have a person in Brazil, just because he was protesting against the decision of Alexandre de Moraes, he was sent to prison, and in prison he was killed. We have another journalist in Brazil who suffered the consequence for criticizing Alexandre de Moraes. His name is Osvaldo Eustáquio, and he was sent to prison, and in prison he became tetraplegic. He can no longer walk, and now his daughter, who is 16 years old, is also being persecuted by Alexandre de Moraes. This judge is doing all of this in Brazil. And his excuses is, we are doing this to defend the democracy. And by the way, this is a false narrative. This is a fake narrative. In the name of protecting the democracy of critics and criticizing, he is putting people in jail, demonetizing people from YouTube channels. I could also talk about Monarch, a young YouTube influencer in Brazil that had to flee to America as well, and now he's exiled here because he can't go back to Brazil. Alexandre de Moraes just ordered Google company and Meta company, which owns Facebook and Instagram, to delete all Monarch accounts and demonetize these young men completely from social networks just because Monarch was criticizing Alexandre de Moraes. So he's a judge that he doesn't take critics, and in the name of this, he's putting everybody in prison who criticize him. I myself, I'm under this risk of being banned off the social network because I am denouncing and talking about the arbitrary decisions that Alexandre de Moraes has taken in Brazil. Yes, this is what is happening in Brazil right now. The social networks in Brazil like Facebook, Google, every single day they receive an order from Alexandre de Moraes to block someone, to ban someone from the social network. And what is the reason? Just because these people are making videos to criticize the Supreme Court and to criticize the government. Let's remember, Alexandre de Moraes was indicated to Supreme Court by Michel Temer, who was the vice president of Dilma Rousseff, who succeeded Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva. The three of them, the same political party. So this judge is ruining many people's lives in Brazil right now. There's a lot of people in jail behind the bars right now in Brazil just because criticized Alexandre de Moraes. You need to know. You need to know what's going on in our country right now. Elon Musk was the one saying that Brazil no longer is a safe place to investors anymore. If you want to invest in Brazil, it's really unsafe because we have this insecurity, judicial insecurity and political insecurity right now in Brazil. So if you wanted to be an investor in Brazil, it's really hard for you to put your money in Brazil because you don't know what can happen in Brazil right now. That I'm not sure if they are gonna mute my voice. And I'm just saying this because I am living in America right now. But I'm here and say that right now, Brazil is considered a dictatorship. There is no democracy in Brazil anymore because democracy allows you to criticize whoever you want, allows you to have free speech, and nobody has free speech in Brazil anymore. People are afraid. The PT party is destroying the country economy. The gas price is super high. Grocery store is super high. Taxes is going up every single day. Brazil is a completely chaos. You need to know that.